Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my birth story video. Levi, you want to say hi? So I was allowed to have two partners with me during my birth, and I chose to have my mum and my dad there. My ex was not there. That was my choice, and I have my reasons for that because we are separated, and I will link the video down below where I talk about that. During my whole pregnancy I had a great pregnancy, and if you don't know from my birth story with Levi, I did have postpartum eclampsia, which I talk all about it in my birth story with him, which I will also link down below. That is a long one, so if you want to watch that one, you can. It will be linked down below. Leo was tracking quite big, like in the 97th percentile, which was really big, and I'm a very small person. I'm only 5'2". We're thinking that they were going to have to induce me at 39 weeks, which no one really wants. You kind of want spontaneous labor because it is quicker and it is, I guess, more natural, and that's what I wanted because I do know from my mum's experience giving birth to my sister, she was induced and it was just a very long drawn out labor, and it wasn't, because I guess it wasn't natural. Leo's just gotten disturbed, so I'm just gonna have to hold him and soothe him back for a little bit. So yeah, I did the last ultrasound I had was at 38 weeks and he was still large, so they did say that they were going to induce me at 39 weeks. So my due date was the 3rd of November and they were going to induce me on the 1st, right? Yeah, I think the 1st of November. And so that was a Monday. So they were gonna, actually they were gonna try and do a stretch and sweep first, which is a less medicated way of bringing on labor. So they sweep like the membranes and the cervix and get your cervix to open up, and therefore labor begins. It doesn't always work. They may have to do it more than once. That was the plan, and if I had gone into labor that day, that would have been great. If not, they were gonna get me back in on Tuesday and actually do a medicated induction. So that was the plan. But luckily, and like the week before I knew this was coming, I was sitting on my birthing ball and I was just doing everything I could to try and bring on spontaneous labor. So I was eating spicy food, I was doing my exercise ball, and luckily on Friday morning, so it was 5:30 in the morning, I was asleep and I sort of felt this ache, like this, I guess it obviously was the start of contractions, but I've been having heaps of Braxton Hicks like for a couple of weeks prior to this. I just figured, oh, here we go again, it's one of those, and I just laid in bed for like half an hour and it still was there, like not getting super intense or anything, but I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna get up and move around, because I do say, like, if you switch positions or if you're walking about or if you're awake when it's happening and you lay down and it goes away, that's how you know it's Braxton Hicks and not actual labor. So I got up, and around about 7 o'clock, it had been an hour and a half now, and I'd started to feel them coming closer together, and they were getting a bit more intense, like, and more regular as well. So around 7:30 is when I called my mum and let her know, because my dad was working because it was a Friday, so he was going to be going to work, and my sister was going to school, my ex was going to work, so my mum was the only one that started working that afternoon. So I rang her and told her this is what it is, and she said, okay, I'll have a shower, come over, because we thought, you know, I'll just labor at home as much as I can before going to the hospital, because that is obviously the best thing to do because you're more comfortable at home. So around this time I did lose my mucus plug. I know, I'm sorry, this is going to be so gross, but you know what, birth stories, you are going to have to talk about stuff like that. So my mucus plug, I lost that between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, and I had to do a wee at 8 o'clock, so I went and did a wee, and when I got up from the toilet I had the strongest contraction as far as that part of my labor yet, and I'd walked just from the toilet, which is down this corridor here, and I walked and came to the kitchen here, and my waters went. It was all over the kitchen floor, And like 2 minutes after that, my mum and my sister came here. She didn't send my sister to school because obviously we didn't know, like, you know, how long this was going to take, whether it was going to be quick and whether she'd still be at school and who was going to pick her up and all of this stuff. So they came here and I opened the door and obviously my pants were completely soaked and they saw a pool of water in the kitchen, and my mum's on the phone to her work saying like, oh my gosh, I'm not coming in at all today. Like, her waters have just gone. I've just walked in here and she's standing in a pool of her own water. So I'm not coming in at all today. This baby's definitely coming today. So just after that, obviously I had to ring the hospital and tell them like, I'm coming now, because you can labor at home as long as your waters don't break. But once they break, you need to be in the hospital. So just then my ex-husband came in and he'd taken Levi, so he was going to keep Levi while I have the baby. So they left and my mum and I went to the hospital. My sister ended up going to my aunt's place. When we got to the hospital, it was about an hour after that. So yeah, it was close to about 9 o'clock when I got to the hospital. And I had contractions on the way there, and every time I had a contraction there was more water gushing, and I was looking at my mum like, oh my goodness, this is going to be all over your car. I can feel it. And I was even sitting on towels and I could feel it running down my legs. I'm sorry, this is so gross. Sorry, his iPad is on again. So we got to the hospital. Even walking up there I had more contractions, and when we got there they had to like clear out a room for me. So they actually assess you first before putting you in a birthing ward. They put like there is a word for it, but where they put the monitors on your belly and check baby's heart rate and the contractions. So they did that for about half an hour. They monitored that, and I was still having contractions. I could feel them. I was having to shut my eyes and concentrate on them. They did give me some toast because I hadn't had time to eat anything. They did say that it was a good idea to have something for energy. So they gave me some water and some toast. And then she checked me internally to check how much I'm dilated, and I was dilated 4. And she goes, oh yeah, so you're definitely in labor. And I said, I know that. And so then they were waiting to get a birthing ward ready for me. And that only took about another half an hour. And I told her that I do want epidural because I did have epidural with my first, and I wanted the same thing this time around. So she told me it was going to be like half an hour or something, because there was like a queue of people waiting to get an epidural. So she suggested that I could go in the shower just to help ease the contractions a little bit. So I did. They had like a chair. I sat in the shower, and it was one of those handheld ones. So my mum was just putting it on my back and stuff, and that really, really helped. It eased the pressure a lot and took a lot of the sting away from the pain, I guess. So I did that for about half an hour, and then I got in the bed, and then the lady that came in to do the epidural, she was reading me all sorts of stuff and everything that could go wrong basically with an epidural. And she was saying to me, oh, you could, have temporary paralysis or paralysis for the rest of your life, and you could have this headache, and this could go wrong, and da 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 da, and sign this form. And so I'm like sitting there going, yep, that's fine. And my mum and dad are standing next to me going, is this woman crazy? Like, she's actually signing this stuff. But I, signed it, and then she had, I think, like a lady that was training. No, the training lady didn't do my epidural. She was there to watch and assist, I guess, and learn. So with my epidural with Levi, it was super quick and honestly not painful. I had a little sting of the numbing needle, and then I describe it as like electricity running down my spine and down my leg for a few seconds, like the static feeling but inside my body. And it went away within a minute, not even that. But this time around, I don't know what was wrong. First she gave me the stinging thing, and I could feel it all on my lower back, like bee stings for a few seconds. Went away, and I was like, great, I'm numb, good to go, here we are. And then she does the actual epidural part. And my mum had walked out for this. She is hopeless with needles. She just can't handle needles. So my dad had to sit on a chair in front of me, and I had to put my legs on. And so the bed's quite elevated, and my dad's legs are here, and my feet are sitting on his legs because I have to arch my back. They say like when you scratch a cat's back, how they arch. and you have to hold that position. And when you're having contractions and you have a big belly, it's really uncomfortable to do that. I had to go and grab Leo again. He was unsettled. And when she did the actual epidural part, I was in so much pain. This feeling felt like 100 needles were stabbing me from my back all the way down to my right leg. It was so painful, and not at all what I experienced with Levi. And I was screaming. I was like, ow, ow, and my dad's sitting and looking at me like, oh my god, what, like, because I'd said to him, like, I've had this before and it was fine and it was easy, painless. And he's looking at me like, what is going on? It felt like it took her so long, and she kept saying, you're doing so well, and I'm like, oh my god, just shut up and finish. Once she does the epidural and she's finished, you don't feel that stinging static electricity pain anymore. And then I was able to, lay back down in the bed, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for the epidural to kick in, so you can still feel your contractions during that time. And even when it does kick in, you can, towards the end mostly, you can feel pressure. You don't feel that real intense pain. They checked me again, so the last time they checked me when I was 4 centimeters, it was 11 o'clock, and then they checked me again at 1, so every couple of hours. And I'd gone from 4 to a 7 in those 2 hours, which was great. We were happy it's progressing so well. I must say though, like, one of the reasons also why I was doing the birthing ball exercises before I went into labor was because there is a medical term for this position, but basically they call it sunny side up, where the baby's back is against your back, and normally they should come out with their face facing downwards instead of upward. But he was sunny side up, so his back was against mine, which probably makes sense why I had a lot of back pain and back labor, which is very painful. So I think, because he did end up flipping to the correct position before I went into labor. When I had my 38-week scan, they were like, oh yes, he's in the right position, and I was like, oh great, like all the exercises I've been doing has clearly worked. No, he decided to swap again while I was in labor. So he went back to sunny side up, and they were trying to, because his heart rate had dropped the first time, and they put me on, they call it a peanut ball. So it's like an exercise ball, but shaped like a peanut. And they were, flipping me over on that and telling me, turn this side, try that side, try this position, that, and they were giving me all sorts of exercises to try to flip him back. Because we actually don't know why his heart rate dropped, and it dropped 3 times over the next couple of hours. And that was very concerning for them. They didn't know why, because everything seemed to be progressing so well. When his heart rate dropped the first time, they had like an obstetrician come in and put a little clip on his scalp. It was more to monitor his heart rate properly, because the one on the bands, like the one on your belly, if it moves or anything like that, it can give you a false reading. So they wanted a more accurate reading, so they put this little clip on his scalp. And after that, it was all good for another, half an hour, 45 minutes, and his heart rate dropped again. And the obstetrician came back in and he said, we are going to try and turn him around internally. So he actually, sorry, this is going to sound very TMI, but he actually had to physically try and turn him the right position. It didn't work. His heart rate dropped again for the 3rd time, and I was at this point 8 or 9 centimeters dilated, and they said, no, we're not happy with this, and this is the 3rd. He goes, strike 3. We're gonna have to take you to theater and have a C-section. And it was all very, like, what is happening? Like, I thought I was having a really nice, quick, natural labor. So then when he said that, and I obviously panicked because this is not what I wanted. But anyway, I was like, you know what, as long as the baby is fine, I will do whatever it is. I will do whatever you say. So at this point, they were trying to get theatre ready, and I could only have one person in there. And my mum and dad were sort of tossing up between who should go, because my dad wasn't there in the room when Levi was born, and he really wanted to, because he's been there when my sister was born, but not for Levi, and now that he came there for Leo, he really wanted to experience it, and he knew my mum is not good with, you know, needles, and so he was like, okay, I'll go with you. And then my mum said, no, I really want to go. I was there for Levi and I want to be there for Leo. And he was absolutely fine with that. Like, he did not mind one bit. He just wanted baby to be safe and me to be okay. So then they were wheeling me away. This is gonna make me cry. They were wheeling me away, and I could see my dad just looking so panicked. He just looked so panicked, and I could tell he was crying. And when they were wheeling me away, I just said, love you, Dad. And that was it, and they took me away. Sorry. I knew this was going to happen. I just felt like my mum and dad were my only comfort during this, and I'd been through so much already previous to this, to the birth. If you watch my previous video, you'll understand. And I just really, they were my safe zone, they were my comfort. And then my mum had to go and put like her outfit on and her hairnet and all of that, and I was actually fine. Like, I wasn't that upset until I got into the theatre room. I was just laying there, and suddenly I instantly just started crying, and I was looking over at my mum, and she was so strong, and she is a crier. Like, she will cry for anything. So the fact that she was so strong, it really, really is exactly what I needed. I needed her to be calm, and I needed her to be strong for me. And they had to give me a boost of epidural, and they said that I could try naturally while I was in theatre, so if anything happened we could just go straight to a C-section. So that's what we chose to do. So they had to give me this epidural just in case they were going to have to do the C-section. And I don't know whether it's because they give you such a big dose all at once, but I started shaking. I obviously don't know if my legs were shaking. I couldn't see, the screen was there. But my hands were uncontrollable. I couldn't control it. And my mouth, I couldn't speak because it was just shaking. It was horrible. So I don't know whether that caused a lot of anxiety for me, which is why I probably was crying. And I was just crying, and my mum, she was just sitting there wiping away my tears and, you know, telling me it's going to be okay. And she was giving me a kiss, and I had midwives around me and nurses and doctors, and they were all assuring me that everything was fine. And they were going to try the suction cup, and I didn't mind. I just wanted to do anything. However they suggested it, I was happy to try it. So I tried pushing with the suction cup for about 3 contractions, and when I say I tried, I mean like I tried. The midwife even told me my eyes were red because I was pushing so hard. I really tried, and they just said no, he was stuck. His head was stuck. And so after the 3rd contraction that I tried, because there were 2 obstetricians there, one overseeing everything and one doing the suction cup. And after the 3rd contraction, nothing was happening. And one of the other obstetricians said to the one doing the suction cup, and because the one with the suction cup, he said, okay, we'll try one more time, one more contraction. And the other obstetrician says, I wouldn't do that. He said something about the baby, jeopardizing babies, something he said, because his heart rate had dropped again. And they said, okay, we're gonna have to do a C-section, and I was just like, okay, like I couldn't speak. And so they started doing that, and I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. Like, it went from being normal experience to suddenly this in a matter of half an hour to an hour, not even that. It was just very traumatic. No time to process, no time to wrap your head around it. And I knew that having a C-section could be a possibility because of how big he was, but I really didn't think it would actually happen. And they said, you know, you can take up to 4 to 6 weeks to heal. All these thoughts are running through my head, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got Levi, like, it's not like I can just lay in bed, you know. And so the C-section part probably only took about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. Because they said even getting him out C-section was difficult because he was in such a weird position, and because I had tried to push, he sort of got stuck. So that to really, and my mum told me afterwards, she says the way they were pulling you, your whole body was shaking. I obviously didn't know this because I felt like my whole body was shaking anyway, my hands, my mouth and everything. And you have to put your hands out to the side like this, both hands. So my mum was holding one hand, midwife holding the other hand. And I had amazing midwives. I happened to have the midwife that looked after me through my whole pregnancy with Levi and Leo. She was there, and a trainee midwife, and my goodness, I'm so glad that she was there. I have never met a more perfect person for this job. She was the calmest, sweetest, gentlest person I've ever met. So yeah, they finally got him out, and they even told me when he comes out, we'll show him to you quickly over the curtain and then go do whatever we need to do, and then we'll bring him back to you. That was what I thought was going to happen. So this is the trigger warning part, okay? So you can skip ahead if you want. But when he came out, they didn't put him over the curtain. They just took him straight to the little, not incubator, but you know, where they weigh them and all of that. And there was a pediatrician there, and he didn't cry. And I was looking at my mum and I was like, why isn't he crying? Why isn't he crying? And my mum can see, because I'm laying flat like this. I can't see the side because there's, you know, 3 people blocking where the baby is. I couldn't see. So she could see though, because she was sitting up. And she told me in that moment, she said, no, he's crying, you just can't hear him. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. But she told me now, obviously, and what I know now, he came out blue. He was stiff, he did not move, his eyes were fixed, he did not cry. And my mum, I don't mean to get emotional, but my mum, she was like, oh my God, if anything happens to this baby, that's like something that I won't be able to handle because of everything else that's been happening. And she was like, this is just going to push her over the edge. I'm sorry if it's making any of you uncomfortable, but this, you know, stuff like this does happen. And he didn't cry for a long time. And my mum told me they put the oxygen mask on his face, and they were like rubbing him, trying to get his color back, and it slowly started coming back, and he was very gurgly and like with the oxygen mask. And at this point my mum said, is it okay if I go and be with him? And I was like, yes. So she took him, and she went over to look at him, and they had the oxygen mask, and they're like, you can take a picture of him, I'll just take the mask off really quick and I'll put it back on. And they ended up having to take him to the nursery for a couple of hours. So I didn't see him at all until I got back to the ward. So that was like 2 hours after birth, because I had to go to recovery after. And they were like, he did cry though before he left the theatre, and the midwife gave me a thumbs up, and I was very relieved. And they took him out to nursery, and my mum said, I'll go be with him. I said, yes, please. And then while they were sewing me up, I think the adrenaline, I threw up, and because I was laying down like this, I almost was like choking because I couldn't tell them that I had to be sick. And poor midwife, the trainee midwife, I ended up throwing up a bit on her because I turned like this to tell her, and she was so sweet. She's like, it's okay, honey, it's all right. And she was rubbing my hair, and I'd thrown up in my ear and in my hair, and she was cleaning me, and she brought me sick bags. And so I threw up twice while I was being sewn up, and that took about, it felt like about 20 minutes to me, this whole getting sewn up part. And then they put me on another bed and they were going to take me to recovery. I was still completely shaking, and even when I got to recovery, still shaking. And I asked the nurse there, I was like, when am I going to stop shaking? And he said it could take up to a couple of hours. I was like, oh my gosh, great. But eventually I fell asleep. My mum, I opened my eyes after, I don't know how long I fell asleep for, but when I opened my eyes, my mum was there, and the trainee midwife was there, and she was stroking my hand, and then I think I heard my mum say, my dad hasn't seen me yet, and is it okay if he comes in and spends some time with me? And they said yes, and then my dad came in, and it was nice to see him again. After I was in recovery for, it must have been almost a couple of hours. Well, the whole time Leo was in nursery, and they were like, okay, we're going to take you back to the ward now, and they'll bring the baby to you. And when they brought him to me, I just was so happy to hold him and know that he was okay. I just felt like all the stuff that happened for the few months prior to his birth, for some reason, all of that just went away in that moment when I held him. All that heartache and pain just left. And once they brought him to me, he was just like an angel brought to me, honestly. And I said it in my other video, he has healed me so much, and both of them, both my boys and my family, especially my parents, have brought me so much joy and peace and happiness and love and support. So while he was in nursery, I think they did keep him on oxygen for like an hour, and then he was stabilized and able to breathe on his own. So they kept him there for that further hour to breathe on his own, and that's when they brought him to me, and he has been perfect ever since then. And thank you, God, for my beautiful blessings. So that is my birth story. It was, I don't know why I had to have two traumatic birth experiences. Like, my experience with Levi wasn't traumatic, not the birth, it was postpartum. I don't know why it had to happen both times. Like, but you know what? At the end of the day, we're all healthy, we're all here, we're all happy and healthy, and that's all that matters. And like I said, I would do everything all over again to have my two babies. So that is my birth story, and I'm sorry if I was emotional or if I made you feel uncomfortable at all, but I just wanted to share this story with you guys because I shared my birth story with Levi, and I wanted to share Leo's one as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting me. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment down below, and please subscribe to my channel. I am trying to grow my channel, so I really would appreciate your support if you would subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot. Thanks again for watching, you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.